Alrighty, folks. Well, Trump has his first court date set. We have a trial that is confirmed for May 24th, 2024. And so this will be coming right at the tail end of the Republican primary, most likely after Trump has safely secured the nomination. Although his nomination will not be official by this point, the convention probably will be like July, August, and is anticipated to be about a 2-week trial. And so, just to clarify, since I know there are so many pending Trump court cases, strange coincidence, all of a sudden, now we get right up to, the year before the election, and it's like, gee, now Trump is involved in all of these criminal cases in like 4 different states. Well, the one I'm talking about is the one down in Florida, in Miami. There was a big protest outside when he was indicted, when he went to be arraigned at the courthouse. That made a lot of headlines. And the judge in the case is a Trump appointee, which is interesting. And so this trial is over the supposed classified documents that were found at Mar-a-Lago. Remember the big Mar-a-Lago raid last fall? That's what this is all about. And so so from the point of the Mar-a-Lago raid until the trial, it'll probably be about 1.5 years total, this whole fiasco. And there are something like, I think, was it 39 or was it 72 indictments? It was somewhere around there. I mean, it was a ridiculous number of felony indictments. And this, and they did the same thing with the Stormy Daniels case, even though that's a state case. Overcharging him with, so many different counts. And so, of course, if he gets just one conviction, he's going to be out of commission. He will be in prison, and there's nothing really he can do about it other than win the election and then pardon himself. Although, in the case of the New York charges, those are state charges, and he wouldn't be able to pardon himself. But as far as the Mar-a-Lago documents thing, if he gets convicted on that, thrown into federal prison, and then still somehow wins, he could pardon himself once he is inaugurated on January 20th, I believe, of 2025. And so, in this case, I don't think that they're going to be able to use the 14th Amendment to try and disqualify him and take him off the ballot. Because as I discussed in the potential charges that could be filed against him for January 6th, those charges would definitely be intended to be used to make a case that Trump should be disqualified from holding office under the 14th Amendment, which disqualified Confederate politicians from holding office in the reunified United States. And even then, the Confederate politicians were granted amnesty, and eventually their rights to hold public office were restored. But Trump, no. Trump, they want to strip him off the ballot by any means necessary. Whether it's, ballot, or I should say they want to defeat him by any means necessary, whether it's ballot stuffing, taking him off the ballot, what have you. Now, in the case of the Mar-a-Lago trial, I guess I'll just call it that, there is one avenue by which they could try and disqualify him under the 14th Amendment. And some people are speculating, which I don't think it's unfair to speculate this, that we will see this happen after the May 2024 trial, when he inevitably will be convicted on at least one count. You would think, if there's this many charges, they're not going to just acquit him on everything, are they? It's possible, but assuming that he does get convicted on something, I think the charge that they probably really want is the Espionage Act. And I should have double-checked. I don't know if every charge is under the Espionage Act. I remember talking about this, how ridiculous it was that they were charging him under the Espionage Act. but I can't remember if there were any charges that were not under the Espionage Act. But anyway, assuming that he gets convicted under the Espionage Act, then perhaps they will try and use the 14th Amendment to strike him, to get him off the ballot. Because they will cite it and say, well, gee, this is an act of insurrection. He's a traitor. That's what espionage is. He's spying, on behalf of Russia or something, foreign power. And this is what the 14th Amendment, because the 14th Amendment doesn't cite a specific statutory crime. It just says, insurrection against the United States. And then they could try and lump together the Espionage Act with insurrection. Although I believe that this would contradict the historic precedent of Eugene v. Debs, who I believe also, I can't remember if they just unilaterally imprisoned him or if he was actually convicted. I think he was convicted under the Espionage Act. He was one of the first people, because the Espionage Act was passed to crack down on dissenters who opposed the U.S. entering World War I. Yes, that's the law that the Democrats are using to try and shut down Trump. A law that was meant to criminalize opposing U.S. entry into World War I. Now, is there any person alive today who's really, who's very passionate about the U.S. entrance into World War I, in the sense that they think that, they're very passionate about saying, yes, we definitely should have gone into that conflict? I can't think of anyone. But anyway, we're somehow still stuck with this law. It's not like Congress has ever repealed the law in the history of their existence. Oh, but anyway, I don't think I made it clear. Eugene v. Debs. So he's prosecuted under the Espionage Act. He's imprisoned. And then he runs for president, and he was on the ballot. They did not strike him under the 14th Amendment, because everyone understood that the 14th Amendment was only applied to Confederates, actual Confederates from the Civil War. It was not supposed to apply to anybody after that. It was not supposed to apply to just dissident citizens who opposed the government, in the present day. It was literally just the Confederates. That's what it was about. And so it never occurred to anyone to apply the 14th Amendment after the Civil War, after the Reconstruction era, I'll say. Even though, during World War I, and the 20s, when Eugene v. Debs, ran for president from prison, there were plenty of Confederates still alive. There were plenty of people who were on the Union side still alive. People who lived through the Civil War were around, and even they did not think, hey, we should apply the 14th Amendment to disqualify Eugene v. Debs and get him off the ballot. So I don't know how they're going to try and, make the same case logically. How they're going to, or I should say, how they're going to convict Trump of the same thing, and then logically say, well, he should be stricken from the ballot. Now, ordinarily, that would be enough to reassure me. But I know these people are not logical. They don't care. They're not about consistency. They're not trying to be consistent. They're trying to get Trump. That is the goal. And so with that goal in mind, it doesn't matter if there is, if the plan makes sense or not. It just has to be close enough for government work. But who knows? If they get the January 6th indictments, and then they convict him on that, which they surely will, it's speculative at this point because it hasn't been announced yet. But if they get him on January 6th, they don't need to try and cite the Espionage Act stuff to disqualify him from the ballots. That'll just be the icing on top. And I was looking at the presidential map the other day, and the swing states that are going to be important in 2024 for Trump to win are going to be Georgia, Arizona, Nevada, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Michigan. Those 6. Those are what's really up for grabs here. All of those states, well, 4 out of those 6 states have Democrat governors. One of the Republican states is Georgia, governed by Brian Kemp. Not a Trump guy. Sheriff Lombardo, or now Governor Lombardo of Nevada, is probably, in terms of, and I'm citing the governors because we're talking, it's the state government that runs the elections. Governor Lombardo is probably the closest thing to a Trump ally. I mean, it's not like he's a super big Trump guy, but he has bravado. He's a tough guy. They kind of have a similar appeal for people on a visceral level. Lombardo's the closest thing to a Trump ally who will be in charge of one of these states that is running an election. So let's assume that Nevada has a cleaner election, and that because of that, Trump is able to pull out a win in Nevada. Okay, but he still has to win two, depending on how you configure him. He's got to win a couple of those other states as well. He's got to win like Pennsylvania and Georgia, or Pennsylvania and Arizona, Pennsylvania and Wisconsin. Pennsylvania's got the most electoral votes, so I think if he doesn't win Pennsylvania, he's got to win like 3 out of those 6 states. And all of those states, other than, I believe, Georgia, have a Democrat attorney general. And, what's the other office? In Florida, we call it the Secretary of State, who's directly, the cabinet official who's directly in charge of running elections. I don't know exactly how in all these other states those are handled. But what I'm trying to say here is that the deck is stacked against Trump as far as having allies who are actually running the elections. If you have anyone who is remotely sympathetic to the Democratic cause, who are running elections in these states, if the 14th Amendment argument is raised, they're going to be highly prone to accepting it and therefore striking Trump from the ballot. And so if Trump is not on the ballot in enough of the, in these swing states, let alone, you don't even ask, can he win them? He's not going to be given the chance. His vote in these states will be 0%. He'll have no opportunity to even compete there. And so all that needs to happen is for 3 or 4, or really any of them, of these 6 states to disqualify him. And it's impossible mathematically for him to win the presidency, because he will not be on the ballot in enough states. It doesn't matter if, New York and California strike Trump from the ballot. He wasn't going to win there anyway. What matters are the 6 states where he actually has to compete. Now, you could say, well, gee, if they strike him from the ballot in, like, Michigan and Arizona, well, then he can just put more time and money into those other states. And he doesn't have to worry about trying to compete in all 6. He can just focus on the 4, and then, he'll do better that way. Well, the same would apply to the Democrats. If the Republican is struck from the ballot in any of these swing states, well, then no one is going to campaign there. Everyone's going to put their attention into the other states, because guess what? If you take one candidate off the ballot in a swing state, it's no longer a swing state. It's a solid blue state. So that seems to be where we're headed. And that'll be interesting, because, that's never happened in American history. Nobody's ever tried to do this. So, it's going to be awful, but, I think it'll be healthy for people to lose their undying faith in democracy. I think that's been tested a lot over the past few years, and I think ultimately, while it is bad in the short run, it's not good to have screwy, rigged elections. It's good in the long run, because people, I think, will appreciate our system of government a little more. They will realize that they are not the one, even more so than they already have, that they are not the ones who are in charge of the government, and that the government is not we the people. So, with that said, I will see you folks back here tomorrow.